Part 58. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 571. Chapter 571 The Ninth Dream. Even Sunian, who prides himself on having no integrity, couldn't help but blush when he heard this. Lee Baikan closed his eyes. The image of Sunian in the dream came to mind. Every time I dream. Lee Baikan could feel it. She became more and more depressed every time. Sunian in this life was not earned through the hardships of the previous life. What's wrong with you? I still think there's something wrong with you. Sunian wanted to struggle out of Lee Baikan's arms. But Lee Baikan said, "Don't move, let me give you a good hug. This way he can have the courage to dream again." Night. The moment Lee Baikan closed his eyes, he entered the dreamland again. Did not think of. This time he actually saw Mo Bao standing in front of Lan Min. When seeing this scene, Lee Baikan's heart was in a state of doubt. Why did Mo Bao face this woman alone? Sunian will definitely not let such a thing happen. The only explanation is that Lan Ren used coercive means to tie Mo Bao over. With a smile on his face that made Lee Baikan extremely disgusted, Lan Min said to Mo Bao, you may not recognize me. I am your father's sister. According to seniority, you should call me aunt. Although you were born by your mother through unfair means, don't worry, my aunt will definitely treat you as her own child. These words made Lee Baikan want to tear this woman apart directly. How could this disgusting woman say such things to a child? There is absolutely no humanity at all. When 7-year-old Mo Bao heard this, he said calmly, generally, when TV dramas say this, characters who can't give birth to children say this. Mother-in-law, can't you give birth to a child? The corners of Lan Min's mouth twitched directly. Tisk, 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 when I was taking the anti-trafficking class, I thought that traffickers would not use such stupid words to abduct children. Thank you, mother-in-law, for giving me new insights. When Mo Bao said this, an innocent smile appeared on his face. Mo Bao's mother-in-law called Lan Min, and his face looked as ugly as if he had eaten shit. Lan Min took a deep breath. Mo Bao, I am your aunt. But you are so old, how could you be my aunt or mother-in-law? Even though I haven't ridden on retarded toys like a rocking car since I was a child, I can still tell the difference. Mo Bao took a few steps towards Lan Min and said seriously. He glanced at her and said, you are obviously my mother-in-law, but you still tell me that you have become a human trafficker, and you are still struggling with me here. Do you think it makes sense? I am not a human trafficker. Mo Bao's eyes showed disgust. Are you coaxing a 3-year-old child? If you are not a human trafficker, then are the people around me made unconscious by ghosts? Mother-in-law, can you be an honest human trafficker? Well, you are still a human trafficker at such an old age. What kind of morality do I expect from you? Lee Baikan felt quite proud when he saw how smart Mo Bao was. But Lee Baikan underestimated Lan Min's shamelessness. Lan Min took out a photo of Lee Baikan and her and handed it to Mo Bao. Look, this is a photo of me and your father. I really didn't lie to you. Mother-in-law, do you think my 7-year-old life was in vain? I didn't know there was such a thing as PS. Mo Bao glanced at it and snorted arrogantly, mother-in-law, you may not know that my PS skills are very strong. Now my mother's photos are all given to me to be photoshopped. Oops. My mother won't let me tell others that her photos have been photoshopped. Don't worry, I have to write down why Sunyankai didn't have his kidneys dug out in his previous life, and how Mo Bao killed the male and female protagonists. And in this life, Mo Bao comes out directly to cheat his father. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 572. Chapter 572 The Ninth Dream, 2. Obviously Lan Min did not expect that Mo Bao would speak so shockingly. When he came to his senses, he looked at him with distressed eyes. Mo Bao, I'm sorry, it's all Ant's fault. If Ant hadn't been negligent before, you wouldn't have stayed with your mother for so many years, and you wouldn't have been taught so. Mother-in-law, what are you talking about? Are human traffickers so rampant now? What's wrong with me around my mother? Mo Bao immediately became angry when he heard someone say bad things about his mother. Mother-in-law, you keep saying that it's my child who died early. Nian's sister, are you related to my father by blood? Do you think I'm stupid? Don't you know that my grandfather is my father's child? Mo Bao, your mother can't give you a better life at all. Your grandfather was deceived by your mother, and even your father was killed because of your mother. Li Baikan next to him really wanted to cut Lan Min into pieces when he heard this. Li Baikan really didn't think that this Lan Ren could be so insane and crazy. Mo Bao, on the other hand, seemed to have listened to Lan Min's words, and his smile slowly turned stiff. Really? Lan Min quickly walked up to Mo Bao, then squatted down. It's true, in fact, your mother doesn't love you. The reason why she gave birth to you was entirely because she gave birth to you, so that she could control Li group. You must know that maternal love is not pure when it is contaminated with impurities, and there is no use in having such impure feelings. Really? Mo Bao nodded as if he understood. Yes. Mo Bao, don't worry, I will be the person who loves you most in the world in the future. I will not let you get hurt at all, and I will let you grow up happily. Li Baikan couldn't help but feel nervous when he saw this scene. Is Mo Bao really going to be deceived by this woman? Although Li Baikan knew that Mo Bao was very smart, Mo Bao was still a child after all. If Lan Min's sweet words were really useful, what should he do? Sunian would definitely be sad. Just when Li Baikan was worried, there was a sudden pop sound. Li Baikan took back his thoughts and saw a small red palm print on Lan Min's fair face. Lan Min was also shocked by Mo Bao's behavior. And Mo Bao took advantage of Lan Min's shock and slapped him again without hesitation. Do you think I have a brain problem like my father? You can deceive me with just these few words. What does adulteration mean? Without the impurities of maternal love, how can I not know whether my mother loves me or not? Fortunately, I am young now and am not considered a man. It's okay to hit a woman. Mo Bao was obviously furious. Just ride on Lan Min's body and hit him. At this moment, the room door was opened. When Mo Bao saw Sunian coming in a hurry, he immediately got off Lan Min and threw himself at Sunian crying, "Mom, this mother-in-law bullies me, Mom, I'm afraid." It was as if the child who hit someone just now was not him. Sunian held Mo Bao in her arms very distressedly. I'm sorry, it's all my mother's fault. She didn't protect you well." Mo Bao also felt that he had gone too far, so he quickly stopped. At this time, Sunian let go of Mo Bao and held him in his arms. "Lan Ren, whatever you want to do, just come to me. Just come to my child." "Sunian, how did you teach your children? Baikan's only child was taught like this by you. How did you let Baikan's spirit rest in peace in heaven?" End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 573. Chapter 573 The Ninth Dream, 3. You keep saying that my child has never been approved by Li Baikan? It's none of my business whether he rests in peace or not. These words immediately stunned Lan Min into silence. Li Baikan looked at Sunian. Sunian now is no longer the Sunian who would get himself killed by doubts and then panic. "Lan Zhen, what on earth are you doing here?" When Sunian said this, Countless bodyguards entered the place. You must know that Sunian is now the actual person in charge of the Li family. Lanji's act of kidnapping Mo Bao has obviously touched her bottom line. Lan Min pointed at Sunian and said with a look of disbelief, "Sunian, you are so shameless. You actually want to use Baikon's power to hurt me. You are so shameless. I am the head of the Li family now. Don't say I will hurt you. Even if I kill you, it will be easy." Sunian's eyes were filled with anger at this moment. At this time, 2 bodyguards controlled Lan Min. At the same time, Huo Linyuan's voice also sounded, "Let's see who dares to touch my woman. If I dare to touch my son, I will fight you to the death." Sunian shouted back coldly, "Lan Min, are you just here to get my kidney? Do you dare to do anything to me? I'm dead, you can only be buried with me. After all, I am the only one in this world who can save you." These words successfully made Lan Min's face change. "Sunian, you signed the donation letter, you can't regret it." But Sunian sneered a few times, then took out a dagger and put it against his kidney. "Then you come and try, see if we can kill the fish and kill the net." This time, Huo Linyuan's expression changed successfully, and he signaled his people to step back. Looking at Li Baikon from the side, he suddenly understood. It turns out that in her previous life, Sunian was only able to win a glimmer of hope with the intention of losing everything. "You can't do this." "Why can't I do this? My life is up to me. Aren't you just waiting for the right kidney? Then I will puncture these 2 things. You can't take away the 2 incomplete kidneys." When Sunian said this, he stabbed the dagger in his hand deeper. Lan Min Fang Kun was in chaos. Sunian glanced at the 2 bodyguards who held Lan Min hostage. The bodyguard let go of Lan Min. Lan Min suddenly fell to the ground. "If you want to survive, then kowtow to me and apologize now, saying that you should not have stolen my son. Otherwise, we will go to see Li Baikon together. He cared about you so much when he was alive. If I can send you down, then Li Baikon definitely happy. What else can Lan Yan do? No one has dignity when facing life and death." In this way, Lan Min was under the coercion of Sunian. "Kneel down and kowtow." Li Baikon could understand from Sunian's eyes that she really wanted Lan Min's life, and at this moment she was trying her best to endure it. Li Baikon understood what Sunian was worried about. She is worried that Lan Min is the heroine of this world. If it weren't for this reason, Sunian would definitely kill this woman without hesitation. Wait until only Sunian and Mo Bao are left. Sunian's all sense was gone. Just hug Mo Bao and cry. "I'm really scared to death. If something happens to you, what will I do? Why does that Lanzi actually set his sights on you? Why?" Li Baikon could feel her fear and panic. But he could do nothing. "Mom, it's okay. Nothing will happen to me. Have you forgotten that I'm not an ordinary kid? I'm a genius." Mo Bao comforted his mother patiently. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 574. Chapter 574 The Ninth Dream, 4. At this moment, the scene suddenly changed. Mo Bao approached Lao Shen with a serious look on his face. "Grandpa Shen, why does that woman named Lan Min want my mother's kidney?" When Lao Shen heard this, his expression changed. "Mo Bao, what did you say, Lan Min? Is Lan Min back?" Mo Bao nodded. Lao Shen subconsciously wanted to say something, but stopped when the words reached his lips. After all, no matter how smart Mo Bao is, he is still a child. "I don't want to scare the children." But Mo Bao said calmly, "Grandpa Shen, I know what you mean, but that man wants to threaten my mother with me. If I really don't know anything, it may lead to the success of the bad guy." Lao Shen thought about it and realized that this was indeed the case. Li Baikon was listening. Even he felt that he was not a human being but a beast. Little Mo Bao's face was full of anger at this moment. My short-lived father is so useless, why does my mother still like him? If I were my mother, I would definitely choose another man. Hey, Mo Bao, you can't say that either, your father was also deceived. What kind of deception? He is obviously blind, that's why he didn't see that my mother is so good. No wonder he was so short-lived. You must know that Lao Shen also watched Li Baikan grow up. Now Li Baikan is a little uncomfortable hearing Mo Bao say this. Lao Shen just wanted to say something to help Li Baikan regain his respect. But before Lao Shen could say the words, Mo Bao said with a serious face, it may be because of this reason that he died so early and his life was so short. Old Shen. Then Mo Bao left. Li Baikan quickly followed. In this way, he followed Mo Bao to the room where his photo was hung. Mo Bao looked at the photo of the deceased with anger on his face. Why don't you like my mother? What's so good about that woman? She's not as beautiful as my mother, not as smart as my mother. She's just like a complete fool. She doesn't have any logic in her words. Why don't you like me? Mother. As he spoke, the anger on Mo Bao's face gradually disappeared, replaced by sadness. Actually, if you were still alive, my mother would be even more uncomfortable. It's okay if you don't love your mother, I will let her live a good life. I will protect my mother and prevent my mother from being wronged at all. Li Baikan just looked at Mo Bao, watching him slowly extinguish his hope for his father. Indeed, it is a good thing to some extent. After all, like myself, is not worthy of his concern. The following days, Li Baikan could feel that Mo Bao had changed. He became silent. He rarely smiled except in front of Sunian and the old man. Start to learn various things. He started practicing various boxings at the age of 8, and he was among the best in all kinds of studies. Sunian couldn't help but feel distressed when she saw Mo Bao like this, and just wanted Mo Bao to rest. But in the face of Sunian's distress, Mo Bao said firmly, Mom, you may not know that children nowadays are very curly. If I take a break, then I will be surpassed by others and I will not be the first. Actually, it doesn't matter if you don't come first. How is it possible? If I am not number one, those little girls won't look at me. Humph, Mom, please stop talking. I just want to be the most handsome guy in the class and the school. I want to have thousands of fans. Sunian was immediately amused by Mo Bao's words, and then poked Mo Bao's little head with his hand. You look like a little hooligan. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 575. Chapter 575 The Ninth Dream, 5. Why are you a gangster? Mom, when I grow up, I want to be a handsome boy, Mo Bao retorted. What can Sunian say in the face of such a calligraphy treasure? Li Baikan looked at Mo Bao. He is really smart. He knew that if he told his mother that he was learning this because he wanted to protect her, Sunian would definitely stop him. But now that she said this, Sunian would only feel that the child had grown up. Won't stop. Mo Bao cleverly hid all his hard work. Okay, Mo Bao wants to be a handsome boy. Mo Bao is the most handsome little boy in the world. No one can be more handsome than Mo Bao. Mom, you are fooling me. Sunian looked at Mo Bao with a very serious expression. Mom, no, Mom promises you, I definitely don't, I promise not. Mother and son laughed directly together. But at night, Sunian quietly came to Mo Bao's room. Open Mo Bao's clothes. I saw that Mo Bao was covered in bruises. Sunian carefully applied the medicine to Mo Bao. Li Baikan, who was standing next to him, couldn't help but sigh. Yes, Sunian loves Mo Bao so much, how could he not notice anything abnormal about Mo Bao? Sunian held back tears and applied medicine to Bao. After applying the medicine, she gently kissed Bao on his forehead, and then left silently. Wait until the door is closed. Li Baikan saw Bao, who had been sleeping, sitting up. Bao sighed deeply. Why do I still get hurt after studying for such a long time? How long will it take before I won't get hurt? Hey, it would be great if mom was a little stupider. In this way, the most difficult thing for 8-year-old Bao is how to hide his injuries from his mother. Bao was very troubled by this. Hence one's little head to ponder. Li Baikan was with me. When Li Baikan woke up from his dream, feeling tired all over. It's the kind of tiredness that you can't describe. He looked at the sleeping woman next to him. After looking at it for a while, he reached out to Sunian. Preach into her clothes. To touch the place where she stabbed with the knife in the dream. Actually, Li Baikan was thinking about it before. Sunian said that Bao only killed Lan Min and Huo Linyuan, the so-called male and female protagonists, at the end of the plot of the novel. When Bao had this ability, he must have reached adulthood. Then how did the previous time be delayed? After this dream, Li Baikan understood. It is the time that Sunian uses his life to delay. Use your life. When he thought of this, Li Baikan's heart couldn't help but hurt. Such movement naturally woke up Sunian. So when Li Baikan came back to his senses, he met the eyes of Sunian, whose eyes were rolling. Are you in heat when you open your eyes? I almost forgot, man in the morning. Li Baikan took the person into his arms. After getting up, Li Baikan went to the guest room. The guest room smells like furniture because it has not been occupied all year round. The reason why Li Baikan came here. It's because this is Bao's room in the dream. He sat on the bed. The image of Bao sitting on the bed, thinking about how to hide the injuries on his body, came to mind. He is so sensible that it makes people feel sad. Li Baikan raised his hand slightly. If Bao really comes in this life, then he will definitely be a good father and make up for it. Don't let him work so hard. Hold up a sky for their mother and son. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich John Word. Chapter 576. Chapter 576, We are the only two in this world with a negative distance. Sunian felt something was wrong with Li Baikan. His spirits are getting worse and worse. It seems like there is no energy or spirit. But every time she showed concern, Li Baikan would always say it was okay. Sunian is not a child. He immediately called for the old Chinese medicine doctor who had treated him before. Li Baikan, ask the old man to look at it for you. Don't refuse. Otherwise, I will run away from home now and you can stay at home alone. Li Baikan, who originally wanted to say something, could only sit obediently after hearing this. The old Chinese medicine doctor took Li Baikan's pulse and said, there is nothing wrong with Mr. Li, he just worries too much and lacks energy. Worrying too much. When Sunian heard this, he thought back to Li Baikan's state in the past few days. At this time, I realized that Li Baikan seemed to have slept a lot these days. Thinking of this, Sunian hurriedly said, by the way, he has been sleeping a lot these days. Mister, is there something wrong with his body? Damn it, I just found out now. However, in normal times, he always pulls me and then goes to me for free, but these days he doesn't go to me for free. Li Baikan knew exactly why he was like this. I was accompanying Sunian's mother and son in my dream. Seeing them living a difficult life in their previous life, I felt distressed and remorseful, and were entangled with each other. How could it be possible without being physically and mentally exhausted in such a situation? He looked at Sunian. Looking at her face, there was a trace of nervousness. Li Baikan curled the corners of his lips unconsciously. The old Chinese medicine doctor frowned after hearing Sunian. If you sleep a little too much, it may have some impact, but it's okay. Madam, don't worry. After Li Baikan retracted his hand, he reached out to hold Sunian's hand. I'm fine, maybe I have a lot of work recently. At this point, Li Baikan thought of the little woman's temperament and paused to think, and then deliberately sighing, okay, I'll tell you the truth. I want to handle all the recent work together, and then squeeze out time to spend time with you. When Li Baikan finished speaking, Sunian immediately turned around and said, how can you do this? Don't you know how much work you have every day? And we are together every day. What can we do to spend time with you? Don't do that, you can't make fun of your body. Then what can you do? If I don't take time to accompany you, then in your heart, Sun Yinger is more important than my husband. Then he pulled the person into his arms. What can I do? Can I tell you directly? If I tell you directly, you will definitely think that I am making a fuss. This was so well said that Sunian really didn't know what to say. Li Baikan had to admit that Mo Bao's method was still useful. As expected of his son, he was able to come up with such a clever solution. Mo Bao, maybe you should think carefully about why I can't come up with such a good idea. Looking at Li Baikan like this, Sunian laughed directly. But at this moment, Sunian had an idea in his head. Then he came close to Li Baikan's ear and said in a voice that only the two of them could hear, Baikan, how can you think like this? My sister and I have a good relationship, but in this world, we are the only two who have a negative distance. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 577. Chapter 577 The Courage to Face Dreams. Li Baikan started coughing when he heard this. Seeing Li Baikan coughing like this, Sunian couldn't help but snorted arrogantly. I really didn't expect that this Li Baikan would be so pure. Li Baikan was concerned that there were people here, and then looked at the old Chinese medicine doctor. I have been sleeping a little too long these days, but I hope I can sleep for such a long time in the next few days. Although I don't have much energy on the outside, I am very happy in my heart. So comfortable that I even wanted to sleep longer. Although Li Baikan knew very well that things in the dream were getting worse. The closer to the result. But Li Baikan still wanted to know. Although the previous life was painful, if he didn't know what happened in the previous life, how could he avoid it? Sleeping too much may not be good for your health. I know, as my wife said, I usually have a lot of work, and now my body can't bear the superimposed work. When Li Baikan said this, he looked at Sunian tenderly. My family is run by me. My wife makes the decision, and since my wife has spoken, I must obey. Josu next to him felt that these words were a bit sour. He looked at the old Chinese doctor secretly. I also saw the same expression as my own on the face of the old Chinese doctor. Although Li Baikan paid himself a salary. But Josu still felt it was a bit immoral. Show affection in front of an elderly person. But Sunian is also a person who has been reborn after all, and he quickly realized something was wrong. Is there really no problem? Baikan, are you sure? Are you sure you didn't lie to me? What problem can I have? You sent the doctor. I just need to have a good rest. Li Baikan said so. So what else could Sunian do? Of course, he would quickly pull Li Baikan back to his room. He then pressed her down on the bed and said, you have a good rest. I don't like how listless you are, you know, but at this moment, Li Baikan held her wrist. Sunian, no matter what happens in this life, I will stand in front of you. You just need to be happy and live happily in this life. Sunian was stunned when he heard this. She didn't understand why Li Baikan suddenly acted like this. At this moment, she was really sure that Li Baikan was hiding something from her. What's wrong, Baikan? Has something happened to you? Did Huo Linyuan do something? If there is anything, then you can tell him directly. I'm good. Nothing happened. Li Baikan pulled the person into his arms again. He only said this because he, a coward, wanted to find some courage from her. Find the courage to face your dreams. I just realized that I love you more today than I did yesterday. Li Baikan closed his eyes. Sunian immediately smiled when he heard this. Really? Then should I do the same? Sunian looked at Li Baikan as he spoke. Unexpectedly, the man who had just spoken had closed his eyes. Sleep so quickly? Has he really been so busy at work recently? Sunian thought for a moment, then leaned close to the man's chest. Hearing the normal sound of his heartbeat, she breathed a sigh of relief. Li Baikan's behavior made Sunian start to wonder if she should go to the company to spend more time with him. Hey, I really can't blame her. She was really bored in the lounge after all. With these thoughts, Sunian also closed his eyes. Hey, I feel a bit uncomfortable. The editor in charge has converted my books to a monthly subscription, which is like reading all the books on the site for 10 yuan. Then how can I use the book coins that I feel sorry for you to be lazy in the future? Hey, next time I have to find another reason to be lazy. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Zhang Word. Chapter 578. Chapter 578. The 10th Dream. Mom, you don't like me anymore, you don't love me anymore. Li Baikan entered the dreamland. I heard Mo Bao's coquettish voice. Sure enough, when he looked over, he saw Mo Bao pulling Sunian's clothes with an aggrieved look on his face. When Li Baikan saw Mo Bao like this, his heart melted. If Mo Bao is so coquettish like him, no matter what he wants to do, he will do it. I wish I could hold the whole world in front of him. Li Baikan walked towards the mother and son. But before he could reach him, he heard Mo Bao say coquettishly, Mom, Mommy, my request is not too much. I just want a father. You like me so much and love me so much, so you can't give it to me a father. Li Baikan. Mo Bao, this dad. Any kind is fine, I just want a father. Other children have fathers, but I don't. When Mo Bao said this, he looked at Sunian with tears in his eyes. Mom, you also know that I am better than other children in cultural classes, physical education classes, and horse riding. I don't want to lag behind others in this aspect. Sunian was amused by these words. You can't be so vain. It's not a matter of vanity, I just want a father, and Mom, wouldn't you be lonely and cold at night alone? Don't you want someone to hold you to sleep at night? When Mo Bao said this, put your hands around your chest. Li Baikan. Although he knew that Mo Bao was smart, there was no need to use his cleverness on this. Sunian paused for a moment, then spoke. But before Sunian could say anything, Mo Bao took the lead and said, Mom, don't talk about how good your relationship with Dad is. That Lan Min is enough to explain everything. I know you are here for me, and now I want a dad. Just do it for me and find me a father. I really want a dad to go horse riding with me. He will accompany me when I do my homework, and he will applaud me when I am in boxing class. When I win an award, he will be able to say to me, Mo Bao, you are great. When Mo Bao said this, he paused. I know you can do these things, Mom, but I really need a dad. Mo Bao's words made Sunian silent. Li Baikan looked at Sunian. Although he was very resistant in his heart and didn't want Sunian to be with another man, he knew very well that Sunian was too miserable in his previous life. If he could really meet someone who would treat her well, protect her, and love her, that's not bad either. Just like that, Sunian was so entangled by Mo Bao that he had no choice but to nod. When Mo Bao saw his mother nodding, he immediately took out a stack of photos. Place it directly in front of Sunian. What's this? This is my father's candidate. I sent a love letter to Uncle Wang before. Mom, didn't you read it? I felt that you didn't like Uncle Wang, so I sent people to find these people. Mom, what do you like? Man, as long as you say it, I can get it for you. Sunian. Li Baikan. Sunian coughed lightly, this. Mom, don't be shy, our family is such a big business and we have this condition. Sunian scanned the photos. Then he picked up a photo. Li Baikan felt anxious when he saw Sunian picking up the photo. However, he comforted himself in his heart. Now that he knew it, he could take precautions in advance in his life. Sunian turned the photo over with helplessness. Isn't this a little too young? Is he an adult? Mo Bao nodded seriously, I have grown up. This uncle is 18 years old. Sister-brother relationships are not popular now, so I picked a few younger ones. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jung Word. Chapter 579. Chapter 579 The Tenth Dream, 2. Sunian was obviously stunned by Mo Bao's words. Mo Bao continued to say thoughtfully, Mom, from the age of 18 to 40, I have chosen for you. No matter what kind of uncle you want, you can. Why not 50 years old? Sunian asked curiously. Mo Bao blinked his eyes, because he is too old. Grandpa is only over 60 years old. If it is too old, Grandpa will be embarrassed. Li Baikan really didn't know what to say. This son is really considerate. Then Li Baikan saw Mo Bao arranging various men to appear in front of Sunian. Various encounters and various pickups. But Sunian was not tempted. The screen changes. Sunian is working on documents in the study room. At this time the housekeeper Lao Shen walked in. Young mistress. Sunian put down the document in his hand when he heard Lao Shen's voice, what's wrong? Actually, what Mo Bao said makes sense. You are still young and you should really consider yourself. Li Baikan knew that Lao Shen came here to represent the old man. The old man treats Sunian as his own daughter and hopes that Sunian will be well. Lao Shen sighed at this time, actually, the master feels that he is very sorry for you. Back then, he knew that the master didn't like you, but he forced you to get together. In the past few years, he often thought, if he hadn't done this, then will you live a happy life? Even the old man has started to talk about it in recent years, wondering whether he did something wrong, and he has no face to see your parents. Sunian smiled and did not answer Lao Shen's question, is Mo Bao smart? Smart, old Shen said doubtfully. So I am very happy. God is fair to everyone. He gave me such a good son. If I ask for too much, he will attack me because of my greed. What do you and the old man mean? Understood. But I don't want to. If the company has just been stabilized in my hands, and if I have any involvement with other men now, then those people on the board of directors will not let it go. I want to hand everything over to Mo Bao safely. When old Shen heard this, he looked at Sunian with distressed eyes, young lady, this is so unfair to you. No grievance, I am living a good life now. When Mo Bao officially takes over the burden on my shoulders, I will find someone at that time. I believe that by that time, I can safely find someone who is really right for me. A good person lives a lifetime. Old Shen wanted to persuade him again. But seeing Sunian like this, I didn't know what to say. So he said some words of comfort and left. After Lao Shen left, Sunian smiled, "Man, now that I have power and money, I need a man. Finding a man is so troublesome, so forget it. It's better to make money." Li Baikan smiled when he saw Sunian humming. Even though Sunian said this, Li Baikan still understood that Sunian did this entirely because of Mo Bao, because he wanted to support Mo Bao. After all, he knows better than anyone else how much pressure the Li group is under. Just at this time, the surrounding screen suddenly went black. Facing this situation, Li Baikan's heart skipped a beat. Know that this has never been the case. Why is this happening? Did something happen to Sunian and Mo Bao? Just when Li Baikan fell into panic, the surroundings around him lit up again. Then he saw Mo Bao with a bruised nose and swollen face being carried back. At this time, Mo Bao already had the appearance of a young man. What's wrong? How could this happen? How could Chen Mo do this? Sunian asked nervously. What exactly happened and why did it happen? Tell me. If you don't tell the truth, then I will make you suffer an ugly end. These words silenced everyone. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Which John Word. Chapter 580. Chapter 580. The Tenth Dream, 3. Sunian glanced at the people around him, and immediately walked up to Mo Bao again. What happened, Li Chenmo? Please speak. What is going on with you? Are you mute, or something? Do you have to? Are you anxious to death? When Sunian said this, his eyes were filled with anger. This was the first time Li Baikan saw Sunian get angry. Are you really going to make me mad? Mo Bao finally spoke when Sunian spoke like this. Mom, it's nothing. I'm grown up now, you don't understand. When he said this, Li silently looked annoyed. Li Baikan looked at the calligraphy treasure in front of him. Mo Bao is about 14 years old now, and he is in puberty. The boy has indeed reached the rebellious stage at this time. However, Sunian said coldly at this moment, do you have to ask me to check it myself? After saying this, Sunian turned around and walked outside. Just when Sunian took a few steps, Mo Bao quickly caught up with her. Then Mo Bao ordered everyone to go out. When only Sunian and Mo Bao are left, Mo Bao told the truth. It turned out that Mo Bao led people to ambush Lan Min. The result failed. When Mo Bao said this, his hands clenched tightly into fists. Why did I find out that Huo Linyuan kicked that woman out? There was no one around her, why couldn't I kill her? Why? Li Baikan thought of Mo Bao's efforts after he was kidnapped by Lan Ren. It turned out that he started to prepare from that time. But the next moment, Sunian slapped Mo Bao directly. That's right, it's a slap in the face. Mo Bao, who was slapped, was not too surprised. Mom, I have grown up. I will not let anything happen to you. I will not let that woman have the opportunity to hurt you. What about you? What should I do if something happens to you? Have you ever thought about what I would do if something happens to you? When Sunian said this, tears fell down, and then he hated Tai Buletin Chenggang slapped him again. Don't provoke Lan Min, we can't provoke them, you know. I don't know, that woman confused that short-lived ghost and harmed you. She even attacked you when you gave birth to me and harmed you repeatedly. She also kept asking you to give her your kidney. If she didn't die, then you are in danger at any time. Mom, don't worry, it won't work this time. Next time, I will make that woman pay the price. When Mo Bao said this, there was cruelty in his eyes. But Sunian, who knows the plot of this novel and knows that Lan Min and Huo Linyuan are the absolute protagonists of this world, of course knows that Mo Bao's behavior is to commit suicide. You can't do this, Mo Bao, I'm fine, really fine. We just need to stay away from Lan Min and the others, and as long as we don't provoke them, nothing will happen. Mom, I'm really not a child now. If we don't provoke them, will they really let us go? Don't lie to me like that. Mo Bao had no choice but to play the emotional card. Even if you don't think about yourself, then you have to think about me. If something happens to you, what will I do? Do you really have the heart to throw me into this world alone? Mom, even if you don't do it for yourself, you must do it for me. What will happen if something really happens to you? These words suddenly made Sunian not know what to say. End of this chapter.